Proposition 16 is one of the worst things that's ever happened on the California ballot. There's a lot of bad things that have happened on the California ballot, but Prop 16 would essentially say that no community could take control of its own power destiny and create a public power system or a CCA system without a 2/3 vote of the public. And you notice how well that's worked in the state legislature. This is entirely financed, supported, and done by Pacific Gas and Electric Company. There is no coalition. There is no community campaign. This is one corporation, PG&E, attempting to tell all of us what we can do with energy in the future in California. And they have committed $35 million to run a Yes on 16 campaign. $35 million, which has come out of your pockets because it's your ratepayers' money that's going to this. So I'm not going to talk anymore except to say no on 16 several times. No on 16. And to introduce our very distinguished former Senator Carol Migden. Carol Migden is the one who introduced the bill and pushed for the legislation that allows community choice aggregation to happen in the state of California. Without Carol's bill, we wouldn't be where we are today. She's going to talk a little bit about what that bill means, what the background on that is, and I'm also hoping she can talk a little bit about one of the provisions of that bill that I find fascinating. That bill, which by the way, PG&E supported in the legislature and is now turning around and opposing. That bill states in it that utilities are supposed to cooperate with cities that are forming community choice aggregation systems. They are not supposed to interfere. Now, I got a mailer not that long ago saying, call the Board of Supervisors and tell them not to do CCA. That was paid for by Pacific Gas and Electric Company. That sounds like interference to me, as does Proposition 16. So Senator Migden can talk about that. We're going to ask all of the panelists, since there are so many of us, to keep their remarks to 3 minutes or less, except for Carol, who gets a few more because she's Carol.
Let's hear for Tim's recognition of that amendment. Hometown, the first thing I want to do is introduce a friend of mine from the legislature who's visiting here in the club, and he's a terrific assemblyman from Los Angeles County. He's running for State Insurance Commissioner. He's a really fine guy, and it's Assembly Member Hector De La Torre. And he's a good fella, and on another end of the spectrum, he'll try and help us with fair insurance rates. I'm also very happy to be here with John and Ross, supervisors, and Ross, you've taken a tremendous lead in actualizing this along with Mr. McLaughlin over in Marin County, which was part of our original vision. Eric and I worked hand in hand, Mr. Brooks beginning to formulate this. Mr. Rizzo has always been on top of these matters as a priority of the Sierra Club. Allow me to introduce a terrific fellow who is my former staff person from Sacramento, who came down tonight to help edify me, to help edify you. And he was really one of the architects of, and Mr. Alan LaFaso, and some of us know, we used to be Life Lobby. Remember the days when Equity California was Life Lobby? Mr. Alan LaFaso, whom we're glad to greet. Paul Fenn was such a pain in the rump when he used to come up to the Capitol that he ended up just out of sheer despair having to do what he wanted because, and we even got him spruced up, washed up so he could talk to the legislatures and make a good case, which he did do. Chris, I'm very glad of your elected leadership and the fact that the Community College Board will take a role. And so let me just say that because it feels like a very cohesive reunion of advocates. And my job is a little technical, and you see I made these hand notes because my smart egghead guy wrote a lot of things, but I think it's important as we look at embarking upon a CCA that we understand what occurred in the California climate to deregulate power and how did it come to be that we could even create this option, which is not frank out municipalization, but darn close to a vehicle to provide clean power. So what first happened in 1996, take us back, there was a bipartisan effort in the legislature. It was a cruelty-free peace bill 100% of the votes it got, and it sought to deregulate electrical. It was the Electrical Restructuring Act, and it was intended to reduce the retail cost of energy through competition. And there was a theory, and they said, well, the federal government should regulate wholesale market of energy, and that the state could control retail market of energy. And it was a concept to say there's plenty of power all around. We can get small purchasers, big purchasers, we can have a variety. And the idea was that, this was more than ample. Well, the gosh darn thing became a colossal failure. And there were, of course, a series of rolling blackouts. And the principle was, and let me just say this, that they allowed originally PG&E to hold on to the transmission lines. And that's a lot of what we call the energy grid. So I'm going to do 101 here with some of us, just to understand. People want to know why PG&E didn't oppose the municipalization. A little bit, this was before the energy crisis. Then in the year 2000, we remember the rolling blackouts, and remember hospitals and seniors and everyone was affected. And the thing about, and you too were affected. Hey, buddy, huh? Okay. But the point being is that, climates change. And so first thing was, there was this precursor bill, which was the Energy Deregulation Bill. And it forced PG&E, which were called IOUs. This is a new kind of IOU, ladies and gentlemen. This is the independent operators. These were, the investor-owned utilities. And it says, you can't have these guys run all the utilities because they have private interests. We're going to replace them in an independent entity called an independent sistered operator, ISOs. So it had this conception that if we opened everything up, we would get competition, and PG&E would get to keep the power lines, and they'd have to maintain them, and they'd have to fix them up, and they'd get a rate of exchange for that, but they had to divest themselves of owning the utilities. They had to be sold to merchant operators, which presumably weren't the utility companies themselves. So a little bit, there were certain precepts that were thought and believed as religion, as something that was pure gospel at the time. And this bill also created the first notion of direct access to clients. It said, well, geez, it should be fair to be able to market your power directly to customers and not have to go through utility. And the idea was there'd be enough variety of kinds of powers that little guys and big operators would all have a chance, and that communities would find their way to the best plans for themselves. And moreover, that maybe cities and counties would get into it too and encourage different kind of municipal plans.